So have you ever sat down to do something creative and immediately like this thought pops up of what if I'm not good enough? Oh, I can't draw. Um, it's messy. It's like all these little thoughts or fears and things pop in, and then it's like we push back and all this perfectionism kicks in and you want it to be right. And then you end up actually not creating, even though you had this amazing desire to create, you end up not creating. And this is an interesting thing because our brain actually needs creativity, like that creative freedom that comes through creating. And today I want to just talk a little bit about that. And what actually happens in our brain when we're doing simplistic projects like, say, circles and dots, and how this can literally help us to calm the stress hormones and actually just find a little bit of freedom for ourselves. So my name is Mandy Fenter. And I run the Unstuck Art Journal membership as well as Aligned Heart Art membership. And today I just want to talk a little bit about creativity and how this affects our brain. And now I think what it comes down to is very often people talk about left brain, right brain. And obviously we all have a left brain and a right brain. You can get very technical about this and what in the neuroscience. But I think the main things to remember is it's like two different thinking styles, if you can think about it like this. Our left brain is logical, it's analytical, it problem solves us, our language sits there, focus, accuracy, getting things, that correctness, everything sits in the left brain. Then there's the right brain. Now, the right brain handles the visuals, the creativity, processing our emotions, pattern recognition, intuition, like those type of things sit in the right brain. So most of us, I think, in our day-to-day lives, we use our left brain, right? Because we're working, you're checking emails, you have to remember drop off, pick up this time, the responsibilities, everything I need to do. This is what I need to finish with my task, tick, tick, tick off, processing things. So a lot of that is using our left brain all the time. But creativity invites us into the right brain, right? Where there's imagination and play and exploration of things that sits in the right brain. And I think the important thing is, sometimes just to give your brain the ability and the space to be able to switch, because otherwise we're just stuck in the left brain running through all the stuff. There's no time to process emotions. There's no time for that left brain to kick off. We're constantly in that processing side of the brain, and there's no time to slow down. There's no time to relax. And when we try to do something for us to relax, it's like we actually can't switch off. Your brain is just running all the time, and then you don't relax. And this is the thing. The one thing that actually helps us to calm the nervous system and to stop stressing is creativity. That is where the key sits for us, is creativity. Because when we are stressed, it's your brain goes into fight or flight mode. It's that response of, like, I mean, a crocodile is going to come out. I need to jump. I need to think quickly response. There's no time for the creative side of it's not, or not even needed for your brain to think about the creative things like, oh wow, look how sharp his teeth is. I wonder, what would happen if this, or oh, can you imagine if he was wearing a pink hat? Like whatever. Silly thing, yeah, but your brain doesn't need that creative side. So when it goes into fight or flight, it switches off the creative side, because cortisol, that stress hormone, is flooding. It gets increased when we are stressed. Your brain is focused on problem solving. It needs to solve this problem now. There's no time to waste and think playful thoughts and imagination and stuff. So it stops that from happening and it keeps this intense focus. But creativity helps us to decrease the stress. When we're in that state of cortisol flooding our bodies, everything, creativity decreases. Your imagination shuts down. Perfectionism comes in. It needs to be perfect. You're afraid of making a mistake. It cannot. And very often when we're in that state of completely being overwhelmed, we do not want to create. we don't want to step into a place of actually going to sit down and doing something creative for myself. We feel like, oh, I can't do it, right? But that is the one thing that can actually help you to switch and help you to calm down and help you just to get out of that stress thing when we actually just stop to create for a little bit. Now, let's talk a little bit about what is actually happening in your brain when you create. So I know we can go deep into how does art therapy work or the neuroscience of the brain. And obviously you can go read up more about this. There's a fantastic cool book called Your Brain on Art or Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And to dive into that type of stuff if you're really interested in that. But what basically happens is when you start being creative, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, gets reduced in your body, right? And um, the default mode gets activated again, which is connected to imagination and reflection, and all of that starts to kick in again. Dopamine starts to go through your body, which is that happy hormone, the motivation for things, the pleasure of doing things. Your emotion starts to be processed, because the left side of the brain is resting and it can actually just organize things a little bit while the right side of the brain is being active and the right side is being used. So when we create without pleasure, we are simply exploring things, right? And this can be simplistic because very often people will say, but Mandy, I'm not artistic. But when you're just using things like patterns, shapes, repetition of lines, doing things that are not very focused on the drawing side of it, but the more opening up to creativity, your brain starts to relax. It starts to recognize, oh, we're in the right side of the brain. This is what we're doing now. It becomes easier to actually create those things. And you start to feel calmer. You start to think clearer. Your emotions suddenly start to feel lighter after activating the right side of the brain. So simple shapes, like circles or dots or patterns is so powerful. It seems simplistic, but because your brain, repetition of like creating a circle and a circle and a circle, it's like a predictable pattern that your brain starts to see. Like there's a rhythm to it. Like when you're listening to music and there's a rhythm, it starts to activate the right brain. The pressure is lower when you're starting to do things that are simplistic. It gets you into the flow, that flow state, which is so beautiful when you go into the right side of the brain and you start to feel like the creativity is flowing. You can feel it happening in your body. So then your brain knows with those simplistic shapes, it doesn't need a masterpiece. This thing, the pressure is off of that. I'm going with the playfulness of it, the rhythm of it, the flow of it, rather than having to be perfect. And that's where that beauty of simplistic shapes can really help to calm your nervous system and get you out of that place of continually being on edge, biting everybody's head off, shouting, over processing things, overthinking, being in that constant state to actually a place of calm where you can think clearer, process things. So I think one of the culprits that comes in here and that could be a problem is perfectionism. And this is something I find very often that a lot of the ladies, even in my membership, say they really struggle with perfectionism. They want the project to look perfect, and they feel I have limited time. I can't spend, and you get over anxious about it when you're starting. But by activating the right brain first and getting yourself into that flow state, that project will flow so much easier and it will be so much easier to actually create it when you realize it's okay. I don't have to have a perfect thing from the beginning. If you retrain your brain how to think about facing that thing from the beginning, that it doesn't have to be this perfection. I don't just have one shot at this. Um, to give yourself the room of messiness, of growth in the process. So, when we stop comparing ourselves a little bit to other people and we don't believe that creativity needs to be perfect because it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. And you don't have to be artistic to be creative and to enjoy that state of actually just stepping into creativity. Very often it's about the exploration of stuff, the curiosity that we can follow to see where can this go, what can it become. When you start activating it, it's like a discovery that starts to happen, and it comes with pleasure and with joy and playfulness of exploring it. And that is where that freedom begins, when you start activating the right brain and it puts you in that calm place. So I've been this year also like been struggling a lot often with not being able to just sit down and paint, because I realize I'm in that stress mode. But the moment I just do activities, simple activities, to switch over to the right brain, I can feel the creativity starting to come, the running of thoughts in my mind, replaying stuff, that stops. It just quiets it. So I can be in the moment, I can create, I can enjoy, and I can process all those emotions that comes with it. So I'm going to be doing a 3-day workshop on this, and we're going to be doing very simplistic activities to actually activate this. So you don't have to be artistic. You don't have to be able to draw to actually apply these things and get yourself into the right brain, and strengthen that right brain to get us into that place of just creative freedom. And that's what the workshop's going to be called, Creative Freedom. And yeah, so I'm going to take you through, but we're going to be doing about 2 projects each day, just with very playfulness, simplistic things that we'll be doing. And you just need to be willing to say, yes, I'm going to try. And to say, I'm going to show up, I'm going to try these things that will help you to really activate your right brain and just get you out of that place of stress and into a place of calmness, of how do I just get into that place in my mind, in the right brain, when it's switched. And you can actually just create with freedom and do something for yourself. Sometimes I think we forget the value of creativity because we want everything to be perfect, and we want to tick all the boxes. And when we're so rushed with things, we often put creativity on the shelf. But that is the one thing that is actually so important for our bodies, and the relaxation and that space of calm that we need to actually process the rest right, and to actually help us problem solve. So creativity comes in many different forms, whether it's in the music, or whether it's pottery, whether it's like all these different things. But I'm specifically going to be talking about the form of art of painting. So if you have watercolors or acrylics or paint pens or something you can easily flow with on your page, and do activities that will really help you to calm down. So keep a lookout for that. And I hope that this has really just made you aware of what is happening in the right brain and the left brain, and why is it important to switch sometimes, and why is it so important to actually have creative freedom for yourself.